And tensions are reaching boiling point in Northern Ireland after a historic win by Sinn Fein at the weekend. The Nationalist Party, which wants a united Ireland, has become the largest instalment for the first time ever after winning 27 MLA seats in the Assembly election. But it's triggered a standoff with the biggest union group, the Democratic Unionist Party. A power-sharing system is in place where the two must work together, but the DUP leader today revealed they will not form a government with Sinn Fein until the Northern Ireland Protocol is scrapped. The controversial deal, struck after Brexit, of course, ensured there would be no return to a hard border with the Republic of Ireland, but creates an effective border in the Irish Sea, something the DUP says undermines Northern Ireland's place in the UK. Sinn Féin's Michelle O'Neill, who stands to become First Minister if a government can be formed, lashed out at the delays earlier today.
As Democrats, the DUP, but also the British government, must accept and respect the democratic outcome of this election. Brinkmanship will not be tolerated where the north of Ireland becomes collateral damage in a game of chicken with the European Commission. The responsibility for finding solutions to the protocol to make its smooth implementation lie with Boris Johnson and the EU. But make no mistake, we and our business community here will not be held to ransom.
So, while this has been celebrated as a huge victory for Sinn Féin, Unionists still slightly outnumber Nationalists in the Assembly, and the vote showed mainly consolidation of the middle ground. Sinn Féin had no seat change, while the DUP only lost 2. But, of course, quick to seize any stick to beat the British government, scheming Nicola Sturgeon has waded in, fanning flames of fear about the future of the Union.
There's no doubt there are big fundamental questions being asked of the UK as a political entity right now. They're being asked here in Scotland, they're being asked in Northern Ireland, they're being asked in Wales, and I think we're going to see some fundamental changes to UK governance in the years to come, and I'm certain one of those changes is going to be Scottish independence.
So, with the historic win throwing Northern Ireland into focus, does Sinn Féin's victory put the Union under threat? Dan at gbnews.uk, tweet me at gbnews. Vote in our poll, but to help you make your mind up, former DUP MP Emma Little-Pengelly, former Sinn Fein Assembly member Daithí McKay, and Conservative Peer Lord Moylan. Emma Little-Pengelly, this isn't so bad for Unionists, you say?
No, I think the problem here has been Sinn Féin spin. They went into this election, as you've said, with 27 seats. They've come out with 27 seats. They had a small increase in their vote of about 1%. And of course, they're trying to give this impression that this is a lurch towards Irish nationalism. But of course, when we look at the nationalist vote share, back in the first election after the Good Friday Belfast Agreement, the nationalist bloc of the SDLP and Sinn Féin had about 39% of the vote. In 2022, Sinn Féin and the SDLP have 39% of the vote. 25 years, no advance in the nationalist cause, despite some demographic change. So, this isn't an indication that a united Ireland is around the corner. It wasn't a good election for the DUP, but the DUP had been warning about this for some time. The protocol is causing significant unhappiness on the ground across unionist and loyalist communities, and that is threatening the stability of peace in Northern Ireland and the stability of the institutions. We want to get back to Stormont. We want to make Northern Ireland work. But the reality is, putting a border down the Irish Sea has caused serious ructions across the unionist community here.
So, Daithí, Emma says this is spin by Sinn Féin. You say what?
Well, I think the DUP, understandably, are in damage limitation mode, because before the election, the DUP were saying that if there was a Sinn Féin First Minister, that it would lead to further calls for a border poll and put the Union further at risk. So obviously they have changed their position. That's totally understandable, but this is a significant moment in the history of the state. It's the first time we've ever seen a nationalist First Minister in this position. And I think that the DUP are in a difficult position. It's a bit of a catch-22. They either go in and work the institutions or they don't. And if they don't go into the institutions, they deny nationalists a First Minister. And of course, nationalists are deeply sensitive about issues around equality. And if they see that a nationalist is being locked out of that role, given the context, it's the first time they've ever achieved it, they will view that with anger and frustration. And that will only result in greater support for Sinn Féin, I would say, in the next election, if indeed we are going to go to another election in the months ahead. So I think the DUP are in a difficult position, and if the Assembly doesn't come back, then that actually puts the Union further at risk.
Lord Daniel Moylan, the Sinn Féin is probably in a difficult position too, though, as well as the DUP, because they're not calling for any sort of poll on a united Ireland for another 5 years, because they know that the support is not there.
Well, let me start by agreeing with Daithí, first of all. This is a significant moment that Sinn Féin is entitled to claim the first ministership under the current rules of the GFA. But as Emma pointed out, this is not because they've got bigger. It's because the unionist vote has split. So more unionist parties now in the Assembly. The Union is absolutely safe. Michelle O'Neill is in danger of becoming a sort of Nicola Sturgeon sort of joke figure, constantly promising a referendum and Irish unification. It's all going to happen in the future, where there isn't the slightest prospect in either country that in the foreseeable future that there will be a majority for independence in the case of Scotland or for unification in the case of Northern Ireland. So the whole thing is completely bogus. The Union is completely safe, and we can put that whole thought behind us now.
Daithí, how do you respond to that?
Well, I think it's a lot more nuanced than that. I mean, the Assembly now contains what we refer to as three minorities. So there is a unionist minority, there is a nationalist minority. Both of those are in around 41-42% in terms of first preference votes, and you have others. And of course, there's many nationalists or people from a nationalist background who vote in these Assembly elections for others because they don't see a vote for in this election as a referendum vote or voting for unity. It's on bread and butter issues, it's on health, it's on abortion and issues such as it. But I do think that recent polling, I think the latest Lord Ashcroft poll had support for Irish unity at 41% in the north, so that is a significant number, and it's actually in the same range as what the Leave opinion polls were prior to David Cameron calling that referendum, and we all know what happened there. So if a referendum is called, and if we have a couple of years to lead into that, so we have a mature discussion and a peaceful discussion is what we all want to see, then there's no reason why we couldn't see a yes vote being carried.
Of course it has to be peaceful, but Emma, I presume from a DUP point of view, you're banking on those polling numbers changing once the Northern Ireland Protocol is scrapped.
Absolutely. I think there's two key issues here. The first is to try to stabilise unionism, and the only way that can happen is to get this protocol resolved. But of course, unionists want to get this resolved not just because of the fracturing within unionism, but because unionists genuinely believe that putting a barrier internal, right down the middle of your own internal market of the United Kingdom is fundamentally bad for the union. It doesn't make any sense. The European Union wouldn't do it. That's why they fought really, really hard to protect the integrity of their single market and internal market. But of course, we've got a second issue here as well, which is the middle ground. As Daithí has mentioned, there's a growth of the Alliance Party. Now, these are people who are pretty agnostic about the constitutional question. They're content enough to be in Northern Ireland as part of the United Kingdom. They are voting to say, look, let's set the constitutional question to one side and get on with health, education, growing the economy, different aspects like that. Now, on one hand, that could be really positive for unionism because the vast majority then are people who are content within the United Kingdom. But if the economy of Northern Ireland does not work, if this protocol fundamentally impacts around consumer choice, around our businesses, which unionists fear it will when it actually is implemented, because as we know, grace periods apply at the minute. There hasn't been that divergence in Great Britain that they can now do, free from the single market and the customs union, that once that starts, Northern Ireland is going to be squeezed on the periphery of the United Kingdom, the periphery of the European Union. The economy is going to suffer. And then at that stage, people start to say, well, would we be better off in the Republic of Ireland as part of that European Union? We need to be very careful about that in order to protect the union as well.
So Lord Daniel Moylan, what are the Tories going to do? I mean,
I have no idea.
Seems like there is debate in Cabinet, but it's got to be scrapped, doesn't it? It has to be scrapped.
We will find out tomorrow. In the Queen's speech, which I believe is now going to be read by the Prince of Wales.
Yes.
We'll find out tomorrow what the government is going to do. and they have said they are going to put in a bill which will allow them to disapply the Northern Ireland Protocol, and they've been reported in the Times as saying that they're not going to put that bill in. So we're going to find out tomorrow. There are obviously people, a couple of people, particularly prominent people in the Cabinet, who have persistently tried to oppose dealing with this issue, even though it does fundamental damage to our own country, and it creates an undemocratic situation in Northern Ireland where people are living under foreign laws with no say, that in fact doesn't exist in any other European country, and no other European country, including the Republic of Ireland, would accept. So it's got to be stopped, and the whole constitutional position, as I use the word constitutional, in relation to Northern Ireland needs to be addressed, and it needs legislation to do it, and I'm looking for the government to bring that forward, to announce that at least tomorrow, and then we'll see a bill some months later. That's what I'd like to see.
Good stuff. That is the Conservative Peer Lord Daniel Moylan, the former DUP MP Emma Little-Pengelly, and the former Sinn Fein Assembly member Daithí McKay.